Hi everyone, welcome back to another week on the Brush by Brandy YouTube channel. This week we're working on this piece that's behind me. We worked on this one live together, which I love doing because then you get to see the process a little more in depth during the live videos, and then I'll shorten it and speed it up in these edited tutorials for you as well to just see the steps. So we're going to do a soft blend on this. This is actually part of a set that's going to be for a little girl's nursery. So we're doing this soft blend of white and gray. We're going to use a little bit of polyonlay appliques in a bee theme, along with a little bit of transfers from Redesign with Prima and some really soft florals I'm going to be adding to this. We're going to do a special treatment to the top, and there's even a little bit of bee theme on the sides of this one. So I think this is really cute. I think this is a set that's going to grow up with a little girl that I'm super excited to be able to do. So let's check out the first piece in this set, and there's going to be more to come. There's 4 pieces total that we're going to get done that are all going to be matching, but they're different pieces. They're a non-matching set that we're going to make match through the finishes. So check them out and let's get started. Here's where I started on this piece, and this was brought to me by my customer. It's made by Pulaski Furniture, and I loved her strategy on this, that if it's well made, even if you don't like the finishes, you can always refinish it and repurpose it for a different room in your home and make use of furniture that you already have. I started out by removing all the hardware on this piece and giving it a thorough cleaning. And once my piece is entirely clean, I do need to scuff sand over the surface of it. This has a little bit of a gloss to the finish, and I want to make sure my paint has something to bite onto. So I took my Surf Prep sander, and I've got a 120 grit paper and a pad on here, and I'm just going to lightly go over all these details to take down some of the sheen on the existing finish. With my body scuff sanded, I do need to pay attention to this top as well. We're going to do a wood stain top on this, and so I need to take it down to the raw wood. I'm doing that using my Surf Prep sander again, and this time I've got an 80 grit paper on there. I'm going to start at my 80 grit to cut through that clear coat, and then I upgrade to a 120 and then a 220 grit to get it nice and smooth. With my top sanded, I do need to get into these deep crevices and get the clear coat and stain out of there, and I'm just going to do that using my carbide scraper. I offset the blade a little bit, and it lets me get into these really fine details. We're pulling our color inspiration for this piece from the crib and the wood flooring that's going to be in this room, so I've got shades of white and gray is what I'm going to be using. I primed my piece using Wiesel primer in the color white, and that's because I'm going to be using a white finish. The primer gives me a base layer that's going to unify my color and take it from that dark wood to the white that I intend to use. So it's going to help with coverage. It's also going to keep my whites from discoloring over time. So I always recommend using a coat of primer under any whites. Next, I'm going to apply a raised stencil using this bee trellis stencil from Royal Design Stencils. I'm using a little bit of joint compound and a putty knife. This is what my raised stencil looks like when I'm done, and then I need to spray it with some primer over the top. I'm just doing this to seal that joint compound because if I paint over the top of it, it will have a tendency to reactivate and smear. I give my surface a very light sanding, and now I'm ready to go ahead and start on my paint finish. This is going to be a 3-color combination. The colors that I'm using are called Snow Owl, Smoky Quartz, and Weathervane. And I'm starting out with that Snow Owl in the center on the side. You can barely tell a difference, but I am brushing on some white here. It's a nice, clean, crisp white. Once I've got my Snow Owl brushed onto the center, I'm going to frame out the outer edges using some of that Smoky Quartz, and then I'm going to lightly work these colors together. To work them together, I just use a soft, smooth synthetic bristle brush. These are my Klingon S50 brushes, which I love for brushing the paint on and also for working those colors together. I usually have out a brush for each color and then a dry neutral brush for brushing together any colors. I also have out a mister bottle and a rag when I'm doing a blended finish. The mister bottle I'll use for keeping my paint nice and wet so that I can keep it workable as long as I need to. And then I use the rag for taking paint off of my dry, clean brush to keep it as dry and clean as possible as long as I need to use it. Once I've got those 2 colors brushed on, I'm going to start working them into each other, and that means overlapping the colors. I brush them together using horizontal and vertical brush strokes, and this just makes sure those paint colors overlap each other and I can pull one color into the other. I pay much more attention to these blends on my second coat than the first, but this is what my paint looks like after 2 coats of a blended finish. Now that my paint is nice and dry, I want to sort of accentuate that raised stencil detail that I added to the side, and I'm going to do that using a little bit of silver decor wax. This color is called Shiny Star. It's from Redesign with Prima, and I'm going to apply it by first putting on my stencil over the top of my raised design, and then I'm going to go over my existing pattern using a light brush and a little tiny bit of that decor wax. This little bit of silver is just going to set off that raised stencil design on the sides, and so you're going to notice it a little bit more. It's going to add just a subtle bit of shimmer. This decor wax dries permanent after 24 hours, so you can apply it over an already sealed finish. In this case, I'm applying it to my raw paint, and then I will allow it to dry, and then I can come back and add my clear coat over top as well. When I pull my stencil back, you can see how that little bit of decor wax just really brought out that stencil on the sides, and it ties in with the gray and the white color that I used on this. It wouldn't be one of my pieces if I didn't add a little bit of black wax accents. So I'm going to apply my wax using an artist brush. I'm going to brush it into the crevices of my piece, and then I'm going to use a slightly larger brush and just feather that wax out onto my paint finish. I'm doing this over my raw paint, but if you feel nervous applying dark wax over your paint, you can seal your paint first, and that will protect it in case you make any mistakes. I'm using very, very, very little wax here. It's so little wax on my brush that it allows for this nice, dusty, feathery finish along the edges. The best tip I can give here is do not apply too much wax and make sure you use a super light hand when you're working the wax out into the body of the piece. So you're ready to see what we're going to do to the front of this piece. I'm adding a little bit of polyonlay, and polyonlay are these laser cut wood accents. They come in a variety of designs. In this case, I'm using, of course, a bee design because I have a bumblebee theme going for these pieces. And so I'm going to paint my bumblebee in the same shades of white and gray that I used on the body of my piece. And then I'm going to use a little bit of adhesive and apply this honeycomb design. And I'm going to fill in the honeycomb using these hexagon shapes. I'm going to apply my same adhesive, which is Titebond Quick and Thick, to the back side of my bumblebee. Make sure all my edges are covered, and then I'm going to press him into place as well. With my bumblebee and my honeycomb fully applied to the front of my piece, I want to ground this a little bit using a floral detail. So I chose this really pale, pretty colors transfer from Redesign with Prima, and I'm just going to apply this around my bumblebee to look like he's flying into the floral. This is the new maxi size transfer from Redesign with Prima, and I was able to use just this one maxi transfer on 3 different pieces, and just those little bit of florals that I used on each one added a tiny bit of color to the front of this piece, and it tied all 3 of those pieces together. It gave something for my bumblebees to be grounded into. Like I said, this piece is part of a set, so if you want to see the rest of the set being completed, take a look at those videos, also available on my YouTube channel. It can be fun to see different pieces done in similar finishes and how they can coordinate. With everything applied to the front of this piece is complete and it's ready for clear coat. Let's go ahead and spray some clear coat on. You can also brush or sponge your clear coats. I'm applying matte varnish just using a sprayer so that I get the cleanest, smoothest finish possible. I'll apply 2 coats of my clear coat to the front and usually 3 or 4 coats to the top for extra protection. And I'm going to go ahead and stage this using some soft silver and gold accents. I went ahead and cleaned up my original hardware and left them in their original color for a soft touch of gold against the white and gray. It was perfect. And then I pulled those same colors out in my staging items. This piece is perfect for a nursery. I love the color combination. It's nice and soft and neutral. What do you guys think? You can find links for everything I use in the description for this post. You can find more Brush by Brandy on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, and YouTube, and on my website at brushbybrandy.com. And if you enjoyed this video, I hope you'll click that subscribe button. You can find weekly painting tutorials here at Brush by Brandy on YouTube.